For centuries, her name has moved through palaces, poems, sacred commentaries, paintings, and whispered stories. Zuleikha, the mysterious woman connected to Prophet Joseph, or Yusuf, in one of the ancient world's most powerful stories. Some traditions describe her as the wife of a powerful Egyptian official. Others transform her into a symbol of forbidden desire, regret, patience, and spiritual redemption. And now, across videos and social media posts, a dramatic new claim has appeared. Scientists have found Zuleikha's DNA. Her bloodline has supposedly been identified. Her ancestry has allegedly been revealed. There is only one problem. No verified archaeological discovery has produced a body, tomb, skeleton, mummy, or genetic sample scientifically identified as Zuleikha. There has been no confirmed DNA test. No peer-reviewed genetic study has announced that her remains were found. No Egyptian inscription has been discovered carrying her name beside a biological sample. So why do millions of people believe the mystery has finally been solved? And more importantly, what has science actually discovered about the people who lived in ancient Egypt during the world behind the story of Yusuf? Because the answer is not a simple DNA result, it is a far more disturbing mystery, one involving missing names, damaged bodies, contaminated tombs, political myths, medieval poetry, modern genetics, and a woman whose identity may have been hidden by history itself. The real investigation begins not inside a genetics laboratory, but inside an unnamed house in ancient Egypt. The story is preserved in two of the world's most influential religious traditions. In the book of Genesis, Joseph is sold into slavery by his brothers and taken to Egypt. He enters the household of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Joseph rises quickly. He becomes trusted. The household prospers under his management. But the official's wife becomes attracted to him. Joseph refuses her advances. Then, during a confrontation inside the house, she grabs his garment. Joseph escapes, leaving the clothing behind. She uses it as evidence and accuses him of attacking her. Joseph is imprisoned. The woman, however, is never named. That detail matters. In the original Genesis account, the figure later called Zuleikha is simply Potiphar's wife. The Quran tells a related but distinct version in Surah Yusuf. Joseph is purchased in Egypt by an influential man often described in later interpretation as Al-Aziz, a high-ranking official. The official tells his wife to treat Joseph well. As Joseph grows into adulthood, the woman of the house attempts to seduce him. The doors are closed. Joseph refuses. Both race toward the exit. His shirt is torn from behind. At the doorway, they encounter her husband. A witness proposes a test. If Joseph's shirt was torn from the front, her accusation could be true. But if it was torn from behind, then she had pursued him as he tried to escape. The shirt is examined. It is torn from the back. Once again, however, the woman is not called Zuleikha in the sacred text. She is described by her position, the wife of Al-Aziz. That means the first mystery is not genetic, it is historical. Where did the name Zuleikha come from? The name appears in later storytelling traditions, religious commentaries, legends, and literary works produced long after the period in which the events were believed to have taken place. Over centuries, Jewish, Christian, Persian, Arabic, Turkish, Urdu, Bengali, and other writers expanded the story. Details were added, characters received names, motives became more complex. In some versions, the woman remains a symbol of betrayal and uncontrolled desire. In others, she regrets her actions. Some later poetic traditions transform the story into a spiritual allegory, where human beauty becomes a doorway toward divine love. One of the most influential versions was written by the Persian poet Jami in the 15th century. His work, often known as Yusuf and Zuleikha, did not function as a modern historical report. It was poetry, mysticism, moral drama, a story shaped for audiences living thousands of years after the ancient Egyptian world it described. And this creates a serious problem for anyone searching for Zuleikha's DNA. Before scientists can identify a person genetically, historians must first identify that person archaeologically. They need a physical body linked to a reliable name. They need a tomb inscription, a burial context, a family relationship, a date, objects that belong to the same period, records connecting the remains to a known individual. Without those things, DNA produces biological information, but not identity. A genome cannot look at a skeleton and announce, "This is Zuleikha." DNA may suggest sex, ancestry, biological relationships, inherited traits, disease risks, or population connections. But DNA does not preserve a person's name. Names survive through writing. Identity survives through evidence. And in Zuleikha's case, the evidence chain is missing almost entirely. Imagine a dark underground tomb. The air is dry. The walls show painted boats, food offerings, servants, gods, and prayers for the dead. Inside lies a woman wrapped in linen. Her DNA might reveal that she shared ancestry with populations from the eastern Mediterranean, North Africa, or the Near East. It might show that her parents were related. It could identify her mother's genetic line. It could even connect her to another mummy in a nearby chamber. But unless the tomb contains a trustworthy inscription, scientists cannot know whether she was a royal woman, a servant, a merchant's wife, or the figure later remembered as Zuleikha. This is where internet claims often cross the line between science and fiction. A real ancient Egyptian DNA study is reported. A photograph of a mummy is added. The story of Zuleikha is placed in the title. And suddenly, a population-level discovery becomes the identification of a specific legendary individual. But what have geneticists genuinely learned from ancient Egyptian remains? For decades, many researchers believed extracting reliable DNA from Egyptian mummies would be almost impossible. Egypt's climate is brutal to genetic material. Heat breaks DNA apart. Humidity accelerates decay. Chemicals used during mummification may damage biological material. Microbes enter tissues. Modern handlers leave contamination. Archaeologists, museum workers, priests, embalmers, looters, and researchers may all contribute foreign DNA to the remains. Under a microscope, ancient genetic material is rarely a complete, perfect spiral. It is shattered. Fragments only a few dozen chemical letters long may survive. Scientists must separate those fragments from bacteria, fungi, soil, modern human contamination, and chemical damage. That is not simply reading DNA. It is rebuilding a destroyed message from millions of broken pieces. Researchers wear protective clothing. Surfaces are sterilized. Samples may be taken from dense bone or teeth, where DNA has a better chance of surviving. The material is ground into powder. Chemical methods release the remaining genetic fragments. Sequencing machines then read millions of tiny pieces. Computers compare the patterns. Ancient DNA damage itself can help prove that a sample is genuinely old. Over time, certain chemical changes appear near the ends of DNA fragments. That damage becomes a kind of clock. Not a perfect clock, but a signature. A warning to scientists that they may be looking at material that has survived for centuries or millennia. In 2017, researchers published one of the best-known studies of mummy DNA from Abusir el-Malek, an ancient settlement in Middle Egypt. The remains covered a long period, from before the Roman era into Roman times. Scientists recovered mitochondrial DNA from dozens of individuals and genome-wide data from a smaller number. Mitochondrial DNA is inherited mainly through the maternal line. It can reveal connections between populations, but it represents only one narrow branch of a person's ancestry. The findings suggested that the ancient individuals sampled from this location had genetic affinities with populations from the Near East and Eastern Mediterranean. The researchers also found that modern Egyptian reference populations showed more sub-Saharan African ancestry than the ancient individuals in that particular dataset. But that conclusion required caution. The samples came from one location. They did not represent every Egyptian province. They did not cover every social class. They did not reveal the genetic identity of every dynasty. And they certainly did not identify Zuleikha. Egypt was never an isolated desert island. It was a corridor. To the north lay the Mediterranean. To the east stood Sinai and the routes toward the Levant. To the south stretched Nubia and the Nile Valley deeper into Africa. To the west lay desert paths connecting distant communities. Ships carried grain, timber metals, animals, soldiers, diplomats, migrants, and prisoners. Armies invaded, empires expanded, royal families married across borders, merchants settled in foreign cities, workers moved to construction sites, enslaved people were transported far from home. The population of Egypt changed over thousands of years. There was never one timeless Egyptian genetic profile. And then, in 2025, scientists reported something even more remarkable. Researchers produced a whole genome analysis from an individual who lived during Egypt's Old Kingdom period. The man had been buried in a pottery vessel at New Wayrat, south of Cairo, more than 4,000 years ago. The study provided an unprecedented look at the ancestry of a person from an early phase of ancient Egyptian civilization. Most of his ancestry appeared connected to North African populations, but a portion showed affinity with populations linked to the Eastern Fertile Crescent, including areas associated with ancient Mesopotamia. This did not prove a mass migration. It did not identify his language. It did not reveal his personal beliefs, and it did not make him a known biblical or Quranic character, but it offered direct genetic evidence that people and ancestry had moved between North Africa and Western Asia in very ancient times. That discovery matters to the wider historical setting of Joseph's story. Traditions placed Joseph within a world where people could travel from Canaan into Egypt. Caravans crossed desert routes. Famines pushed families toward the Nile. Egyptian power reached beyond Egypt's borders. Western Asian communities lived in parts of the Nile Delta during different periods. Names, clothing styles, weapons, animals, and artistic scenes all preserve evidence of contact. One famous Egyptian image from Beni Hassan, painted during the Middle Kingdom, shows a group of people from Western Asia entering Egypt. They carry weapons and goods. Their clothing and appearance distinguish them from Egyptian figures. The painting does not depict Joseph. It does not show his brothers, but it reveals that the movement described in ancient stories belonged to a historically possible world. Foreigners entered Egypt. Some traded, some worked, some served rulers, some rose to positions of power, others disappeared from the record. This is the world in which the Zuleikha tradition must be examined, but to find her, researchers would first need to answer a much larger question. When did Joseph live? There is no universally accepted archaeological date for Joseph. Religious believers may accept the story as sacred history, while historians and archaeologists continue to debate its relationship to surviving Egyptian records. Some theories place Joseph in the Middle Kingdom. Others connect the story to the Second Intermediate Period, when rulers of Western Asian origin, commonly called the Hyksos, controlled parts of northern Egypt. Still others view parts of the narrative as memories shaped and written in later periods. Each possibility changes the search area by centuries. That is not a small problem. It is the difference between searching for one missing person in one city and searching across an entire civilization lasting thousands of years. Egyptian chronology is filled with changing dynasties, disputed dates, overlapping governments, lost archives, damaged monuments, and rulers whose names were deliberately erased. Palaces were rebuilt. Tombs were robbed. Temples reused older stones. Papyrus documents burned, decayed, or were destroyed by water. The Nile shifted course. Cities vanished under fields and modern settlements. If Zuleikha was the wife of a powerful official rather than a queen, her burial may never have been monumental. Her tomb may remain undiscovered. It may have been destroyed. Her mummy could sit unidentified in a museum collection. Or she may have been buried under a completely different name because Zuleikha belonged to later tradition rather than to her historical life. That possibility is crucial, even if archaeologists found the real woman behind. The story, her Egyptian name, might bear no resemblance to Zuleikha. Researchers could stand before her coffin, read her titles, scan her body, extract her DNA, and still fail to realize who she was, because they would be searching for the wrong name. The title, Wife of Al-Aziz, creates another challenge. The word Al-Aziz can express power, honor, or high status. Later readers often treated it like a specific official title or personal designation, but matching it directly to one exact ancient Egyptian office is difficult. Was her husband a palace administrator, a military commander, a royal guard, a household official, a provincial governor, a senior court figure? Different translations and traditions create different images, and every image points archaeologists toward a different group of tombs. The book of Genesis names the official as Potiphar. That name is often connected by scholars to an Egyptian-style name meaning something like the one whom Ra has given. Names of this general form are known from Egyptian history, but their presence in the text does not identify one unique man. Many Egyptian names referred to gods. Many individuals could carry similar names. Finding a tomb belonging to a man with a related name would not prove that he was Joseph's master. The same is true of Zuleikha. A familiar name is not enough. Science requires a chain of evidence: location, date, inscription, historical context, family connections, material culture, biological analysis, and independent confirmation. Without that chain, identification becomes storytelling. There is also an uncomfortable ethical issue. Ancient human remains are not merely scientific objects. They were people. Their bodies may hold religious meaning for communities today. Museums and laboratories must consider permissions, cultural sensitivity, destructive sampling, and the question of who has the right to study the dead. DNA analysis usually requires removing part of a tooth or bone. The sample is destroyed during testing. For a unique mummy, that decision cannot be reversed. Scientists therefore need a strong reason before damaging a body based only on an internet theory. Suppose a mummy were discovered tomorrow inside the tomb of a high-ranking Egyptian official. Beside him lies an adult woman. The tomb dates to a period some researchers associate with Joseph. Could this be Zuleikha? Not yet. Investigators would begin with the tomb itself. Was it sealed or entered by robbers? Were the bodies originally buried there or moved in antiquity? Do inscriptions identify the couple? Are the coffin and mummy from the same period? Were objects added later? Did ancient priests reuse the tomb? Next would come physical examination. CT scans could reveal age, injuries, dental condition, disease, and mummification style. Radiocarbon dating could estimate when the individuals lived. Chemical analysis might reveal diet or geographic movement. Strontium isotopes in teeth could indicate where a person spent childhood. Oxygen isotopes might provide clues about water sources and environment. DNA could show biological sex and ancestry. It might reveal whether the woman was born locally or shared ancestry with populations outside Egypt. But none of those results would prove that she pursued Joseph, accused him, repented, or inspired later poetry. Genetics can reconstruct bodies. It cannot directly reconstruct private conversations. It cannot recover moral choices. It cannot read guilt from a chromosome. And it cannot distinguish history from symbolism without archaeological context. That is where the true mystery becomes more powerful than the viral claim. Perhaps the question is not whether scientists solved Zuleika's DNA. Perhaps the question is why modern. Audiences want DNA to settle an ancient spiritual story. We live in an age where genetics appears almost magical. Police identify suspects through distant relatives. Families discover unknown parents. Scientists reconstruct human migrations. Ancient skeletons reveal lost populations. Royal remains are tested. Diseases are traced through history. A few molecules can overturn centuries of assumptions. So when people hear that Egyptian mummy DNA has been decoded, the imagination moves faster than the evidence. Could scientists test Pharaoh? Could they find Joseph? Could they identify Moses? Could they prove the ancestry of every figure in ancient scripture? The technology feels powerful enough, but power is not the same as certainty. Ancient DNA works best when researchers ask limited questions. Were these individuals biologically related? Did ancestry change across time? Was this person male or female? Did people migrate into this region? Did a disease-causing organism infect this body? These are testable questions. Is this legendary woman Zuleikha? It's much harder. To answer it, scientists need evidence outside the genome. The same problem has appeared in other famous identifications. When researchers studied remains believed to belong to historical rulers, DNA alone was rarely enough. They needed genealogy, burial records, radiocarbon dates, injuries matching historical accounts, archaeological context, and comparisons with known relatives. Even then, debates continued. Now consider Zuleikha. There is no confirmed tomb, no verified body, no known child whose remains can be tested, no accepted family tree, no surviving personal object containing DNA, no contemporary inscription clearly connecting her to Joseph. The mystery is not a one missing genetic sequence. It is an entire missing evidence network. But there is another twist. Zuleikha may not represent only one historical woman. Over time, storytellers may have combined layers of memory, a real Egyptian official's wife, older tales about temptation, moral lessons about power, court stories, theological interpretation, Persian ideas about beauty and divine longing. The character who survived into later literature may be a fusion created across centuries. If that is true, there may be no single Zuleikha genome defined. There may have been a historical woman behind the earliest tradition, but the Zuleikha, known to millions today, was shaped by generations of writers. Her identity exists at the border between person and symbols do not leave skeletons. This does not mean archaeology has nothing to offer. In fact, the search can reveal something larger. Ancient Egyptian DNA is beginning to show how deeply connected the Nile Valley was to surrounding regions. Each new genome adds a small light to a massive dark map. Researchers may eventually sample individuals from more locations, periods, and social groups. They may compare people from the Delta with those from Upper Egypt. They may study communities linked to Nubia, Libya, the Levant, the Mediterranean, and desert trade routes. They may discover families buried together. They may identify first-generation migrants. They may show how conquest, trade, famine, and marriage changed Egyptian society. New techniques may recover DNA from remains once considered impossible to analyze. Proteins could help when DNA is destroyed. Isotope studies may trace movement. Artificial intelligence may assist in joining broken texts or recognizing patterns across thousands of inscriptions. High-resolution scans may reveal names hidden beneath damaged coffin surfaces. Entire archaeological sites may be mapped below the ground without excavation. One of those discoveries could bring researchers closer to the historical environment behind Joseph's story. A palace archive might name a foreign aid administrator. A tomb could describe an unusual court scandal. A papyrus might mention a prisoner who became a royal advisor. A cemetery might reveal a household containing both Egyptian and Western Asian ancestry. But even a discovery that resembles part of the story would need to survive intense scrutiny. Coincidences are common. Ancient Egypt contained millions of lives. Officials had servants. Prisoners entered royal systems. Foreigners rose in status. Famine occurred. Dream interpretation was important. Power struggles filled the court. A single similarity cannot prove identity. The strongest evidence would require multiple independent details lining up at once. The right date, the right place, the right official, the right foreigner, the right family, the right inscriptions, the right archaeological context, and perhaps biological evidence connecting the individuals. Nothing like that has yet been found for Zuleikha, so the mystery remains unsolved. But it has changed. The question is no longer, what did scientists discover in her DNA? The honest question is, why was a DNA discovery claimed when no verified sample exists? Part of the answer lies in the way information travels online. A cautious scientific paper might say that 3 ancient individuals from one Egyptian site showed certain genetic affinities. A headline simplifies that into, "Scientists reveal the DNA of ancient Egyptians." A video changes it again, "Egyptian DNA changes history." Another creator attaches a famous name, "The DNA of Pharaoh's court." Finally, the claim becomes, "Scientists found Zuleikha." At every step, uncertainty disappears, limitations vanish, population data becomes personal identity, possibility becomes proof. The process creates a story that feels satisfying. But it is not science. Real science is often slower, more cautious, more frustrating. Researchers say may, suggests, consistent with, and further evidence is required. Those phrases sound weak in a dramatic title, but they are signs of intellectual honesty. A scientist who refuses to make an unsupported identification is not hiding the truth. That scientist is protecting it. The most responsible conclusion is therefore clear. Scientists have not solved the mystery of Zuleikha through DNA. No authenticated remains have been genetically linked to her. No credible study has revealed her ancestry. No laboratory has proven her identity. What science has done is open a new window into the populations of ancient Egypt. It has shown that the Nile Valley was connected to North Africa, the Levant, the Eastern Mediterranean, and parts of Western Asia. It has demonstrated that ancient DNA can survive in Egyptian remains under certain conditions. It has revealed movement and mixture across thousands of years. And it has given researchers tools that could one day transform our understanding of the world behind ancient religious stories. But tools are not answers. A genome without a name remains an unknown human life. A name without a body remains a historical tradition. And Zuleikha stands between those two worlds. Picture the final scene. Night settles over Egypt. The Nile moves silently beneath the moon. Beyond the river, desert cliffs hide. Thousands of tombs. Some are open. Some were robbed centuries ago. Some lie beneath villages, roads, fields, and sand. Inside one forgotten chamber may rest the wife of a powerful official. Her linen darkened by time. Her name painted on wood. Her teeth still holding the chemical memory of the water she drank as a child. Her bones carrying fragments of ancestry. Perhaps she was born beside the Nile. Perhaps her family came from another land. Perhaps she knew a foreign servant who later entered the royal court. Perhaps the story remembered a real conflict inside her home. Or perhaps her life was completely different from every tale written about her. Until a body, inscription, date, and historical context come together, no one can honestly say. For now, Zuleikha's strongest surviving trace is not genetic, it is cultural. She lives in Scripture's unnamed woman, in medieval commentaries, in Persian poetry, in paintings, in theater, in sermons, in moral debates about desire, truth, false accusation, temptation, forgiveness, and transformation. Her story survived because every generation saw something different inside it. Some saw danger, some saw injustice, some saw repentance, some saw human weakness, others saw the soul, chasing a beauty it could never possess. DNA may one day identify forgotten families from ancient Egypt. It may reveal migrations no historian imagined. It may connect people buried hundreds of miles apart. It may even bring science closer to individuals whose lives helped inspire ancient traditions. But there will always be a boundary between what the body can reveal and what the story claims. Genes can show where ancestors came from. They cannot show why a person lied. Bones can reveal wounds. They cannot reveal regret. A tooth can preserve childhood geography. It cannot preserve love. And a mummy can carry an entire genome while keeping its deepest secrets perfectly silent. So somewhere between the laboratory and the legend, the mystery of Zuleikha remains untouched. Not because science has failed, but because science has refused to pretend. And perhaps that is the most important discovery of all. If her true tomb is still hidden beneath the sands of Egypt, and her DNA still survives inside it, would finding her genome finally reveal the real Zuleikha? Or would it only prove how little a person's blood can tell us about the story of her soul?